not ask. They can really, they're like an editor is just like a project manager really. They're like looking at this whole project, they want to get it done and they want to make sure that you're like motivated to the end. So they're not like pushing you to get things in on time, but they are pushing you to get things in on time, which is really fun. But yeah, there's so many pros and cons as Matt alluded to. When you are self-publishing, you have to be your own business person. You have to be your own publisher. You have to do your own marketing. You have to do your own editing, which is not really fun for most people. And when you work with
social media posting.
I mean,
I hate it.
What are you talking about? I love
I know
X.
that you like it. Yeah.
I love
Who doesn't love
X? X. I wanted to say it in unison with you, but I was being silly. So, like, for someone like me, I'm someone who, I don't know, I love to crack open a spreadsheet, get in there, make sure all my taxes are in order. I don't mind the kind of type A aspects of self-publishing, but if you just want to draw explosions and beautiful people making out, you don't have to do that. Is it after 6? Can I swear?
No.
Beep!
Well, you've already touched on a lot of this next question, but did you want to expand at all on any pros and cons of self-publishing versus traditional publishing?
Yeah, I definitely think that for traditional publishing, they're in the business of helping you market the book and finding an audience for it that they can, sell it to. So I definitely do feel like the range of things that they'll be interested in is slightly smaller than I guess what you would call the breadth of human experience
that you can explore in self-publishing.
You can explore in self-publishing, which is definitely like when I think about my comic Sakana, it's comic strips, and they're black and white, which is such sort of an antiquated format in this age of webtoons that I don't think any traditional publisher would look at my landscape format books that are like 8.5 by 11, but this way, and be like, oh yeah, we'd love to, spend extra money to print that, which is what I have to do to print it myself.
Sakana is the opposite of a webtoon?
Yes, I would definitely. Yes, in fact, it goes this way and not this way, but it's because it's 13 years old. So, and getting older every day, just like me. But yeah, so it's definitely like I really like self-publishing because you can just, if you have some weird voice inside of you saying you have to tell this weird story that makes most sense to you, but maybe other people will also be interested, that I think is more in the realm of self-publishing where you can stretch your limbs in any direction. But yeah, traditional publishing definitely, they have a quota that they would like to meet. And they're ready for weirder things, I think. More ready than ever.
I think once a weird story makes enough money, then they're like, oh,
we want more.
We want this.
Yeah.
So like if Scholastic could get a hold of Homestuck, actually, I feel like that'd be like Unstoppable Force meets Immovable Object. I think like that would just destroy their offices.
Something like that.
They would download the file, it just explodes. Goodbye, Clifford. Yeah. But I do think self-publishing, you can do anything and post anywhere and no one can stop you. Yes, you have to find that audience, but sometimes, honestly, that audience will find you. They're just going to be like, oh, someone's doing a monster comic where they fall in love. Like, there's not enough of that. And the monster stays ugly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Heck yeah. It's not after 6.
You can't say hell. Sorry. So there's endless pros and cons, but it really depends on if you want to go a more traditional corporate email contract route, or if you want to get...
Which offers stability, more stability certainly than self-publishing.
If you want to get nitty-gritty and weird and make your own zines, then you can go to self-publishing.
Okay, so for those out there who might want to pursue traditional publishing, trying to get your work in front of publishers is a big task to undertake alone. And nowadays, most editors won't accept graphic novel pitches unless they're sent by an agent. So at what point should graphic novelists consider looking for an agent or manager?
I'll let you talk about that.
I think the best thing to do would be to research what a finished graphic novel pitch looks like. If you want to go the traditional publishing route, you kind of have to play by the rules of that ball game. So if you can find as many examples of what a traditional, like a pitch looks like, a pitch usually has, it might have some character illustrations, like anywhere from 8 to 20, 30, 40 pages already done. Has a synopsis, plot, actual character descriptions, and the funny thing is, like, making a pitch is so much work. If you actually get a pitch finished, that is one huge hurdle. And yes, there is that hurdle of getting your pitch in front of the actual publisher, but getting a story done and showing that you can put together even that kind of smaller project, honestly, that is a great way. If an agent can see that, they know that they can work with someone who can potentially do a larger project. So yeah, I think that would be researching how pitches look like is a step before even going out and trying to get a publisher to look at your story.
Yeah, this is definitely a topic that's been at the top of my mind recently because I actually do not have an agent yet.
Unagented.
I'm unagented, and I have been this whole time. But I definitely think that I have been able to meet most of my goals on my own, which my goals have mostly been in self-publishing. Once you do get into traditional publishing with graphic novels, if you have a whole story, a whole pitch put together, I definitely do think that an agent would be helpful to sort of they're like the ones that can find like the little nooks and crannies to like get you into that you wouldn't necessarily have access to yourself. I was fortunate enough that Ngozi's agent brokered the deal with First Second and sort of like they wheeled me in like she's here too. It's like this also applies to her.
That's part of it,
but it's her fault. No. But no, I don't know if I would have gotten the same opportunity if an agent had not been involved in that situation.
I would definitely say the best thing that an agent does is make sure you get the best deal that you can, which is not necessarily always the highest advance, but good royalties, good rights, like protecting the various rights that you have and sub rights and everything. And they're the person who can, when they broker that deal, but they also go in and talk to the editor. They can sometimes even step in and chat with marketing to make sure that the hard work that you do isn't squandered with a bad rollout. So agents are kind of just these watchdogs that facilitate the entire creative process.
Yeah, but also keep in mind that they will take a cut of any deal that you make with the publisher, but it's sort of in their best interest to get you a good deal so that they also can get their cut.
So they take a cut, but you make more money because they want to make more money.
It's sort of a situation like that. But like I said, I feel like getting an agent is not the first thing anyone has to do when they're starting out in comics. I think the first thing to do is to start making something on your own and put it out there. We obviously are both huge proponents of self-publishing, so I think if you can start to make something for yourself in that space, then you can start to think, well, maybe I could take the next step and get an agent or pitch a graphic novel, perhaps.
Yeah, and it sounds like when you want to approach an agent, you might not need as much as you might think at first, right? Like you're talking about needing a proposal as opposed to needing like a complete finished product.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's great. So how does a comic creator who's hoping to break in know when their work is ready to be traditionally published? I know that that's something I wondered about all the time when I was in art school.
Yeah. I think you have to be a little audacious when you make comics. You have to, like I said, I can only really speak to my own experience, sort of, and the journey that I've been on, which was I wanted to make a funny little story, and there was no one who was going to stop me from posting it online, no matter what. And just sort of like building that momentum, just understanding that like this is something that you do like, this is something that you love to do, and that you want to make more of, I think will push you further faster than anybody who says, I would like to do that, but then never gets started, sort of thing. And then, if you are already publishing something, if people are already reading it sort of in your own space, you're already ready, I think, as long as you have people looking at your stuff and you are committed to it and it's, happening regularly, people are following along. I think that means that, you can start to think about what's next.
I think, if you have a readership, you might already be ready. That just shows that there's people who are interested.
You can at least self-publish that.
Yes, you should at least self-publish. Honestly, that's kind of it, because there's so many different levels of...
Like, if you look at the mangaka One, who made Mob Psycho and One Punch Man, if you look at, he's a good artist, but I would not say he's the most technically
That's what I was trying to get to. There's different qualities.
There's different qualities that you need. It's like, if you aren't, the most technically proficient artist, are you a very good writer? Or do you make very compelling stories that sort of can speak for themselves, even if the art, technique isn't there just yet? I think, as long as you're putting stuff out there and people are responding to it.
That's the most important
That's
part.
the most important part, and I definitely think everybody should try self-publish. This is supposed to be a graphic novel,
But we're like
also
just secretly
talking
talking about
self-publishing.
It's all tied together, right?
Yeah, it all happens together. Yeah, I think definitely trying to self-publish something first and seeing how that goes is like a good litmus test for how ready you are.
Well, I would love to turn to the part of the program where I ask you to gush about your upcoming book, if that's okay. And by the way, we will have about 15 minutes at the end to ask questions, so be thinking about anything that you'd like to ask our panelists.
Please ask us questions.
Yes. Please. So, you collaborated on the upcoming graphic novel Bunt, which will be out in just a few months from First Second.
Yes.
Please pre-order.
Please pre-order Bunt.
Our children won't eat. We don't have children.
I wanted to ask, what did you learn from working together that you'll carry into future projects? And if you want to give us a little summary of the book as well, it would be awesome.
Will I pitch the book?
Yeah, you should pitch the book.
Hey, I get to talk about Bunt. Okay, so top line, Bunt is the story of art students who have to win one game of softball in order to get financial scholarships. Yeah, it's funny because it sounds really hard.
It's terrible.
Because it's terrible. So they're trying to get athletic scholarships. Molly Bauer is this like super chipper, like just A+ student. She's the main character.
She is.
She's lived in this small town in North Carolina her whole life that has a wonderful art school. And she, on the first day of school, she realizes that her full ride scholarship is gone. And she still wants to go to art school. She still wants to go to school, so she has to figure out a way to somehow basically scam the school out of money so that she can stay there. It's a story that's based off of, no, not based off,
well,
but deeply inspired
in some way
by Madeline and I and our experience at our former art school, which...
Tori as well.
And Tori.
We're all scatties here.
We all want revenge. No, I'm just kidding.
I want them to invite me back to speak.
They already have.
They already have, yeah. You, I don't know if they're going to invite you. No,
no, they're going to...
They will.
Oh, yeah, they may never invite me back. But Scout was a really great place where we learned a lot, and we just wanted to make a story that, I don't know, exemplifies like all the amazing characters that we met at art school.
It's both a love and a hate letter to art school.
It's mostly a love letter.
Mostly a love letter. It's a love letter to art school and the connections and the people that we met there, and a hate letter to the financial burden that it puts on all of us.
Which is not applicable to any one school.
Yes, it's more of a universal, I guess, college, university experience at this point.
Yeah. But, oh man, what did we learn from collaborating with each other? You've taught me a lot, not to get sincere. Yeah, put away those tissues.
No.
No, but I think you really taught me a lot about writing for someone else, because that was the first time I'd ever written for someone who wasn't me, and it showed.
No, it wasn't that bad.
It wasn't that bad. No, but I learned a lot about when you're writing for someone else, there's a lot more like thoughtfulness that has to come in, and I don't know, you were very gracious about that, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think that definitely, I mean, I was used to working with other people's scripts from all of my work on like Adventure Time and regular show. I would both write and draw, or write and draw together at the same time. So I sort of had the experience of all of those different parts of the process. And honestly, compared to some of the scripts that I got out of that experience, your script was very generous.
Thank you.
Because sometimes I would read, like, I worked on a Banana Guard Academy miniseries for those characters in the Adventure Time universe. And
Name the writer who did this to you. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
It was one of the showrunners, so I can't say it.
Don't do that.
But some of those pages would have like 10, 12 panels on them, and I'm like, what? Do you know how big a comic page is, sir? It's like, this isn't a European comic. We're not printing it at like 9 by 12. This is going to be like this big, and each of these panels are going to be like this big. And I think that sometimes people who are just writing do not realize that it takes much fewer words to say something enormous than it takes lines to draw it. Yes. So it's like, you could just write something like, the crowd cheered. And it's like, I have to draw a whole crowd for how many panels? Yeah. It's just like something very innocuous like that. But you have drawn comics.
I've actually drawn comics, so I know I wasn't going to write like,
no.
Oh, then Molly jumped into the Millennium Falcon.
No. It would be like,
I was like, what?
No.
I also learned that collaborating with someone to make a graphic novel, it is a lot about trust. Like, just knowing that we had the same goal, we wanted to get this story out, and that helped a lot of other things kind of, how did I say it, like, weren't as important, because we had that goal.
Yeah.
Of, like, working together.
Yeah, and we definitely did go through some trials and tribulations with it. There were some mental breakdowns. There were some, not because of anything Ngozi did, just, you know, sometimes when you have this is getting too real. Sometimes when you have two people, when you have two separate lives, who are trying to make something happen together. And
we're getting a divorce, guys.
No.
I'm so sorry.
And one of those people is like, oh no, my personal life spiraling. And you sort of like fall off for a little bit. It was so. Ngozi was so gracious to me in those difficult years, being like, it's okay, we'll get it done.
Madeline's fantastic.
And then once I figured my shit out, once I figured things out.
I think we get one F word since it's PG-13.
Just so all of you know, there's a sign on the backs of these signs that says,
don't swear,
from
basically.
panels between 10 to 6, keep language PG-13.
But PG-13 movies you get one F word, as long as it's not
we don't
referring
have to, we don't say the F word.
Yeah,
but anyways, I said the S word. Anyways, that's just the thing, is that I think that working in collaboration means communication. And if you are not communicating with each other, if you become anxious about it, if you become sort of like worried about like the imbalance that's being created between the two of you, it's just important to make sure that you return to the same place.
Homeostasis.
Metamorphosis. No. But yeah, so definitely, I mean, any graphic novel project, let's be real, any graphic novel project will be delayed probably.
Oh, I've never
at some
seen one
point.
be on time.
Just like every Kickstarter that ever happens, every graphic novel will also be delayed because life happens.
Life happens.
Especially if you have multiple moving parts. Life happens for different people at different times.
Yeah, I hear like, guess how much time you need and add at least 3 months to your production schedule.
I would say add at least a year.
Yeah, honestly, I'm with you.
You can get away with it.
And the only reason I mentioned the F word thing is I want to keep the audience on their toes.
So it might come at any time.
We get one. I'm just kidding.
No, we're not going to say that.
I mean, it's not my job to. I guess it kind of is. Oh no,
Sorry,
is it? Oh. Okay. Well, maybe let's go back to safer territory. I wanted to talk about webcomics again a little bit.
Yes.
Okay, so the webcomic scene has changed dramatically in the last few years, and it's making it a bit harder for new voices to find an audience. And big publishers are more eager than ever to acquire graphic novels. Since you're both successful webcomic artists, in addition to being traditionally published, do you think it's still worthwhile for creators to self-publish our comics online?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
You gotta get your work out there.
Yeah, because, a publisher isn't, you have so many things to say as a person. Anybody does. And we're using the metaphor as so many things to say, so many comics to make in your life. So the first thing that you say is not the thing that a publisher will probably pick up. The first thing it's going to be for you, probably, and you alone, and like the 5 or 10 freaks that are like, yes, I'm so into this. As like, the sickos meme, like the yes, you and 10 sicko. That's like, I was on a panel like at a different convention where I used the you and 10 sickos as that'll be the first thing that you do. Yeah. You and your little group of people who are into what you're making, and just you need to build on that. I think I don't think it's good, like it isn't good to jump right into like a giant space opera that's like 15,000 pages or whatever. It's also good to start small with like small projects for you, put them online, see who bites, see who presses the heart button or whatever.
I think the webcomic sphere nowadays is so different because before, when we were making webcomics, there was no expectation that a show would, like a comic would become a TV show or a movie,
No.
whereas like webtoons, like there's like a pipeline it's kind of like an IP farm. They want to find stories that they can turn into media projects. And I do think that changes things a little bit. There's like a bigger fight to like get your webcomic to be as popular as the most popular one.
And polished as possible.
Yeah, where there's so much fun in like the first webcomics I read. Let me tell you guys about Mega Tokyo. Like, you want to
tell you about smackcheeves.com.
You just want to find a little freaky comic that someone's drawing on like notebook paper.
Yeah.
There's something good about that.
So, one of my very favorite webcomics was a comic called Mamga, which was by, Mamga herself was a Japanese woman who was a mother, and she was just drawing these little tiny comics, just like little like 4 comas, like straight up and down, like 4 panels about herself and her daughter and like the things that they had done that day, and they were just so cute and so funny. And I think to myself, webtoons this would not do great on webtoons.
Webtoons would slam dunk that into the trash.
Yeah,
they wouldn't appreciate it.
But it's just things like that I feel like really, truly inspire me to be like, you can make anything, you can do anything, and it's important to let yourself be messy and bad at drawing and bad at telling the first story, because the next thing that you make will be more informed, and then it's just up from there. And I do think that it's a little disheartening to see that currently the focus is on sort of like,
Polished,
firing these like beautiful, perfect, polished cannons, like, bombs right out of the cannon, one right after another. It's been a long day. I'm starting to ramble.
No, but I like that. But it's true. I feel like especially newer webcomic artists, they think like my thing has to be like I just have to launch this beautiful, perfect, polished piece of artwork, and then like that's my comics career.
And then it'll happen.
But no. you got to start messy, and that's the fun stuff. Oh my God. So yeah.
Because the first 100 pages of something that you draw are going to be terrible, and the next 100 pages are going to be better, and then the next 100 pages are going to be better. So, but if you don't start at the beginning and sort of like fight your way to the top, fight your way up, nobody can just get there. You need to fight. I'm sorry, it has been a long day.
This is how I laugh all the time when I'm talking with you.
No.
Because I think you're very funny.
We're too aggressive. We're aggressive webcomic people.
You gotta fight for it, though. I agree.
Anyways.
I really love that, what you're saying about the incremental progress, especially when I think back to art school. I wish that earlier in the program I had done much more thumbnailing and penciling and not worried so much about getting to inks and colors, just done hundreds of pages of sketches, right?
Yes.
And like really learned how to panel things and how stories flow over the pages. So what advice, besides all of that, would you have for people who are just getting started making comics and dream of being published someday?
Oof. My biggest advice that I'd give to anyone who wants to make comics professionally or even just have their own little thing going, start small. Start small. Everyone has, like you said, the gigantic space opera that you wrote in middle school with
High
your best
school for
friend.
me, yeah.
And it's about like an angel
Angels
who
and
loves
demons
a demon.
and the son
then
of the Grim Reaper.
there's like a
Yeah.
vampire
Yeah.
who wants to be a werewolf, and there's like all your OCs, but like, I don't know, like Naruto's there too for some reason. He snuck in. You will write that. I know you will one day.
You will take parts of it with you for the rest of your life.
But
and
the
put
first
them
thing
into
that you
other
need to do
things.
is just 8-page zine, 16-page zine if you're feeling crazy. Just a small project. One of the biggest things you can do as a graphic novelist is learn how to finish projects. That is probably, I would say, the number one missing thing in people who
Yeah.
don't make it.
Yeah, people who don't necessarily feel comfortable taking the next step, I feel like probably have not had an easy time finishing their own projects. So I do definitely think that like incremental progress, like we were saying, is what's key, especially for your own like, your feeling of like self-accomplishment. You're like, you've got this little like 24-page thing that's totally finished now. You never have to work on it again. And as somebody who did jump into an extremely large project right away that is now over 13 years old, it's always with me. It's always with me. But I long for the day when it will be finished and I can put it to rest, because in the meantime, there were like a lot of other things that got me excited that I wanted to work on. And overburdening yourself with like too many things at the same time is like, I think, a huge way to invite burnout into your life. So as long as you're sort of like promising yourself like this progress that's moving in the right direction, you're not like overworking, you're happy with what you're making, or at least you're feeling like you're on the right track in terms of getting better. I just think that that's an easier way to stay in love with comics, to the point where you will then pitch your comic and be published.
Well, so we have time for one or two more questions before Q&A. Speaking of pitching, that's a perfect segue, because being able to pitch our stories is a skill that's useful whether we make webcomics, sell comics at conventions, or work with a publisher. Do you have any tips for how to make a book pitch compelling to readers and potentially editors?
I do like selling stories. I think the most important thing for pitching is to really simplify the top line of your story. So, who's one character? There's one protagonist. What do they want? What's stopping them? Boom. When I was telling you guys about this story, I talked about art students. Okay, what do they want? To go to art school and not have to pay for it. What's stopping them? They suck at sports. Like, just condense it into one easy message. And if you want to talk about larger pitches, that's a whole nother topic. I would suggest Googling graphic novel pitches. But I think I already kind of outlined what a pitch needs earlier.
Yeah, I definitely think if you are struggling to describe your comic in a single sentence or like a nice, easy blurb, then maybe things are a little too complicated at this juncture. Maybe this is something that you can split into two ideas and like pitch two easier, lower scope things. Or maybe it is something that would need like 2 or 3 books to tell. And in that case, you would probably have had to have been published for at least 1 book before they're going to, want to look at you for like a longer series. So I think that's definitely another thing to do with scope and promising smaller projects to yourself before you get into like, yes, the space opera, which some people do it. Some people get there. A lot of people don't. I would say 99.9% of people do not get to the space opera because the rest of life is happening. And you have to understand how long something like that would take you to make. My comic is only 600 pages, and it's taken me 13 years to get through all of that. And for a graphic novel like this, it's like 2 or 3 years is like minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, and that's a significant chunk of your life, you know? You have other projects that you're probably going to want to do, and other things that you're going to want to experience. So, yeah, it's definitely a matter of committing to, you know, committing to what you can commit to before you go for like this is my extremely complicated pitch that will require multiple books to get through. So, yeah, just sort of pacing yourself in that way.
I think with that, we can open up to audience Q&A. Does anybody have a question? You can raise your hand. Sure.
Hi. I think there's a mic so that your
Yes,
voice can be
you got it.
amplified.
Hello? Oh,
Yeah.
there we go. Yeah, so I'm an illustrator and cartoonist myself, and I was just wondering what your process is for approaching a project as big and meaty as a graphic novel. As in, how do you approach that whole process from like scripting to thumbnailing and penciling all the way till the very end? Do you sort of follow that in order, or do you break that up in a certain way or schedule?
So the question is, because you moderated our last panel, thank you so much. Yeah. But the question is, if you have experience drawing, what is the meat and potatoes process of working through a graphic novel from scripts to thumbnails to finished work? Maybe we can go back and forth.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say you just got an email. Hey, your book is greenlit. Yay! Now you have to write it. It's not so fun anymore. So it depends. There's a lot of different things that none of these processes are like fluid. You might start thumbnailing before you totally finish your script, but usually what I would do, I'm working on a book with DC right now, and I have already given them the pitch. The next thing I would do is send them a more detailed outline that might be 5 to 8 pages describing the whole story more in depth, so that my editor knows what I plan to do, and so that I don't jump into the script without the plot figured out. So they want to know where I'm going. So I would work on an outline, and then after that, work on the script. Yeah.
Yeah, and for drawing, I think what First Second wanted was like all script and then all thumbs and then all pencils, and that's just not. I have a tough time working that way personally. I like to do pages in like big chunks, like 30 or 40 or 50 at a time, like all the way to completion and then start on the next one. But that's just because I am very used to working that way in webcomics and in self-published comics. So I think typically what they will want is like they'll want, yes, the script figured out.
Yeah.
And then they'll want all of your thumbnails, all like 300 of them for the whole book, and then all pencils, and then all inks, and all letters, all colors, in like big swipes. And that can be another consideration if you're thinking about publishing traditionally, that's typically how they would like you to work, and if you struggle to work in that way, there might be a little bit of weirdness.
I think there'd be a little bit of friction, but like I found that with most publishers, like if you tell them how you're working,
Yeah.
they appreciate that more than like how it actually gets done. They just want to know what to expect.
Yes. Also, yes, they want it to get done.
They want it to get done.
No matter what.
So I think after you would finish for First Second, and with my experience with DC, like you would finish your script, they would give you feedback. You'd finish your thumbnails, they'd give you feedback. Pencils, feedback. Inks, feedback. And then, you do your colors, you get feedback, and then they letter it. Yeah, or someone will letter it.
Or somebody else, yeah.
You can letter it yourself. The publisher might letter it for you.
Yeah, so, yeah, I think it definitely depends on who you're publishing with, if you are publishing with somebody or just doing it yourself. There's just lots of different ways, but...
And because you're not really done even then. No. After you turn in final pages,
never really done.
You go through like 3 or 4 rounds of full edits where they find everything like, hey, that character isn't wearing a shoe in this panel, and then you go back and fix that.
In our case, it was people had the softball gloves on their left or right hand in different panels. I don't know how the hell the the proofreader
They
caught
caught
that
that.
every single time.
That's, yeah.
But it is also important for you to reread the whole thing again yourself. Like, I know sometimes if I feel like I've just like, you know, I finished it all, I don't even want to look at it anymore, you have to go back through, make sure it's totally represented in the way that you want it to be, because there were a lot of little things caught, but then at the end, I noticed that like there was a whole softball scene where like somebody who was caught out with like a fly ball was like then running the bases in the next panel, and I was like, nobody caught this? This was like the final round before we sent it off to the publisher, and nobody had pointed it out. I was the one who had to go back in and be like, wait a second, we can't print this.
Madeline played softball, so.
Yeah, I was the only voice of that on the project. But yeah, it's yeah. Then
That's the whole process.
also you can tell the editor or the proofreader that you don't want to make the change. Sometimes you can just disagree with them and they'll let it slide.
It's that 4-letter word, stet.
Stat. You just say
don't
stat.
change it.
It's like, I'm not changing that.
Yeah.
No. So.
I knew we'd get a 4-letter word into this panel.
It's really the best one, too. All right. Does anybody else have questions?
Just about life in general.
I mean, we can just chat.
We can all just chat.
What else are you guys into? Oh, wait, Jesse has a question.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can reach this.
You can adjust it, too.
That's a lot of work.
You got it.
Hi. So I have a question for folks who are interested in writing comics but don't have the skill set to draw them. Do you have any advice for folks who want to do that? How would be the best way to work with an artist?
Oof. I have very strong opinions on that. That question almost has two parts of like, how do I get into writing comics and working with an artist versus what I need to know when working with an artist. There's been this very interesting phenomenon in comics publishing where publishers will hire prose writers to write graphic novels when they are completely different things. I would say if someone is more used to prose writing and they want to get into graphic novels, read a lot of comics and read a lot of comic scripts, because like Madeline said, you know, the descriptions, the lovely flowery descriptions that you would have in a prose novel, it doesn't work the same way in comics. Like, you need to set up shots for your artist.
Yeah, and also trust your artists to fill in most of the details themselves.
Yeah.
So like saying, if you do need a crowd scene, for instance, sort of like trusting that they will know how to position all of the people and like to make it look interesting and exciting, and not necessarily being like, in row 1 there's a woman with a red shirt and then next to them is
the
like
artist freedom.
somebody with a hat on and in the background, and no, it's just like,
The artist wants to have fun. You can let them go wild.
yeah.
Oh, and then the second thing I would definitely say is if you want to start making comics as a writer, you basically have to find an artist that you want to work with. And as a writer, you have to let them know that, hey, I'm gonna market this. I'm gonna be the project manager. I'm gonna be the marketing team. I'm gonna be publicity. I'm gonna be social media for this. Like, the artist. So the birds and the bees.
Oh
So
no,
when-
you're not gonna do this.
Okay, I won't get too into it, but the writer doesn't really do that much after the comic, after they write the script, and the artist does a lot of work to, let's just use a metaphor, grow the comic in their creative womb. I'm making Madeline uncomfortable.
No.
So the writer really does have to do a lot of the extra stuff. 'Cause if you're self-publishing, yeah, all that stuff that we talked about, that's the writer's job. And that's how you get artists to love you, because they're like, oh my God, I drew this thing and everyone read it because the writer promoted it. And then eventually people pick that up and you can work for publishers.
Yeah, and I definitely think that if you're both starting out recently, writer and artist, you know, there's definitely a lot of that you can work on together to sort of like grow in tandem. If you don't know any like artists personally that like you would like to sort of practice with or do a little project with, that, you know, you would both work together for free basically with knowing that you would make something together. If you are out there looking for an artist to work on, just like cold calling people, basically, it might take some financial
Yeah, you
incentive.
gotta have money. You have to pay artists.
You
You
will
gotta pay
probably
artists.
have to pay them a page rate, which I also think is a big proponent of. If you are a writer also just starting out, write an 8-page script. It doesn't have to be super long. Pay somebody to only make 8 pages, and then you both have something that you can show very easily to sort of prove out, your skills in a small way. Grow that portfolio.
As a writer, you're also learning how to work with people. So if you're like, I have this great vision for my perfect story, and you can't communicate with an artist and give them helpful, kind feedback, yeah, good luck. Good luck with that.
This topic is reminding me that it might be a good idea to ask what you two think about collaboration agreements between artists and writers. Do you think they're a good idea for self-published writers, like putting out a webcomic together? Or like when should 2 people or more collaborating on a comic get a collaboration agreement in place when they're like trying to get traditionally published as well?
I generally think that if there's money involved and there's a schedule involved, you need some type of written agreement. That's, no matter what you do.
Yeah, no, definitely if there's multiple moving parts, like an artist and a writer, maybe even a colorist that you bring in. I do think that self-publishing is still like a good first step, even for that. Even like you would get practice in putting a team together and managing a small team. I would also say maybe managing a short anthology or something like that.
Anthologies are really good.
Would also be like a good first project for like writers or artists or a writer-artist duo. Just putting together, also that would probably be a good first project if you were looking to get into editing for comics. Was that
Yeah,
answering the question? Okay.
totally.
You
Does
can
anybody
find
else?
sample collaboration agreements online.
Yes.
Looks like we have a question.
Hi.
Welcome.
I just like to actually make a small comment first before my question.
Oh, you have more of a comment than a question.
Okay. Just for like clarification, like webtoons, like the webtoons original and the webtoon canvas are different, and so actually, like if you're interested in doing the self-publishing route, then you go into webtoon canvas, and that might be a way to get into webtoons original. And then webtoons original is more like traditional type of publishing, where you have an editor and people which you work with, maybe colorists and stuff like that. So they're very similar, and I think like if you're wanting to get into doing a webtoon, that you don't look at the originals first. Look at the canvas as your platform for how you start and how you develop, and how some of them have changed into becoming an official webtoon artist. And I think it's a good platform to help people with.
Is
and
it still a
such.
thing where people like graduate to
Yeah.
originals?
Yeah,
Okay.
they do. There's a lot of artists who start in Canvas, and then they get, then the people from Webtoons will go over and contact them if you become popular enough, and then you become that. And they'll rework the artistry sometimes, and so they'll polish it, and they'll help with the storyline, and it will oftentimes change in there. So, it was like Goodbye Romeo, I can't remember. That one was one, like there's a lot of examples like that there. And so I think like that is a good thing. But if you don't want to go to Webtoons, so this is my question part. What do you mean by self-publishing? Where should you go? Like what's some other places would be good to do self-publishing if you don't want to do Webtoons and such?
Well, certainly, I think you make a good point with the Webtoons canvas, not necessarily originals, where you can just start uploading, your own thing, whatever you'd like. Back in the day, it was Smack Jeeves was the place that you would do that. It was like an aggregate, personal comic website, basically. I know that there's a lot of, there's like Tumblr CSS templates that you can use to like set up your Tumblr page as basically a webcomic page. And then all the way back in a long time ago, it was, I think, Keen Spot was so there always have been these
I haven't heard that name in years.
Yes, there's always been these places where like people could just sort of make a basic little template site and start uploading pages. I think, yeah, definitely you and I came up in a time where Webtoons was not the place to do that, but certainly it is, I think, right now, the place to start doing something like that.
I would still say that.
Also
like,
Tumblr, I would
Tumblr
say.
still, but like the ways that people are sharing their stories nowadays, like you can have a TikTok that is just
true,
slides
yeah.
of your comic. I've seen TikToks that are people just reading their comic, and the comics are like, please put, like the comments are just, please post the next like page. So you can somehow finagle TikTok to do that for you. Instagram is a really big one. That's how people find artists a lot nowadays. And the artist formerly known as Twitter is still pretty good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but there hasn't been a new like kind of indie.
I think Webtoons Canvas is the sort of current, like anybody can post there. Anybody can post any webcomic that they want, really, within certain parameters. But yeah, it's just it's so weird. I feel like especially within webcomics and within self-publishing webcomics, there are like eras. Certainly, like there was era 1 was like Penny Arcade and like that sort of stuff. Era 2 was like the very end of it was Smack Jeeves, and that's where I started. And I think you were like the beginning of era 3, where like webcomics became a bigger thing.
Yeah.
And then 4 is Webtoons. It's just Webtoons, more or less. But also I would say, again, this is a good opportunity to make a short comic, a little tiny one, 8 or 12 or 24 pages, take it to places like this.
Yes,
and start
really
giving
good.
it out to just about everybody that you meet and say, either this is the first 8 pages of my longer comic, please read it online, or this is a short story that I've made, please check it out. This is where you can find more of my work. And just start networking with other people, spreading the word. You're on the street, you're
I think that's fantastic advice. Your first fans are often going to be your colleagues and your classmates. So forget about Webtoons. We're at Webtoons right now. That was supposed to go to applause, but this one.
No, nobody's gonna.
No one's going to applause that.
No.
Somewhere in there, era 2 or 3, I think there was also a surge of people who were hosting comics on their own sites, right? That seemed
I would
very
say
common for a while.
post beginning of 3, everybody got their own websites basically, and then like they all came off of Smack Jeeves when that disintegrated.
Yeah, what I'm kind of hearing from webcomic artists who are just trying to get started is that people, most webcomic readers, it feels like at least, want to read webcomics on these platforms that they're comfortable with. They find more comics within that ecosystem, but those ecosystems really promote certain genres and certain types of stories.
Can
right?
sometimes get a little homogenous.
Yeah. But there are still places like Hiveworks, right?
I mean,
I am part of Hiveworks.
I am 100% a Hiveworks person.
Yeah, so there are these companies, sites, collectives, I think they're called.
It's sort of like I think there's sort of half a publisher and half a webcomic services company. So basically, they'll build a website for your webcomic. They'll help you run ads for it. They have like a store sort of system where you can put stuff in it, and they'll fulfill the orders for you from their from their warehouse. But it is a curated list of webcomics that they service, and so that's another reason I think to just start putting stuff out there on promoting it on now there's weirder ways to promote things like TikTok, like Instagram, just posting weird panels and funny faces on Twitter and Tumblr and stuff like that. Just
Get anything.
it's tough out there. It's brutal. It's
Yeah.
brutal out there, as Olivia Rodrigo would say, but
On that note, our panel comes to a close.
it's brutal out there.
No, thank you both so much for sharing so much about publishing and webcomics with us. I think there's lots of great information out there for people who are hoping to break in and find new venues to share their work. So GeekGirlCon is selling the first volume of Check Please, Ngozi's books, at their merch table. And if you're back tomorrow, make sure to find Mad at their table, 412.
Yes,
412.
I'm at 412.
412.
You look for all the big fish stickers.
So to close out, where can we find you online, and where can everyone read your comics?
Yeah, I'm Ngozi U pretty much everywhere. Ngozi-Ukazu on TikTok. And you can find my books in libraries and bookstores across the world.
On Instagram and Twitter, I am mad_Rupert. And on Tumblr, I am My Name is Mad. And you can read my webcomic Sakana at sakana-comic.com. Over 600 pages to get started.
Start tonight.
Because you could start tonight. Come find me tomorrow at my table and talk to me about it. But I think that's mostly.
And then obviously you can come by and get a flyer from us if you want to pre-order Bunt. Comes out February 13th, 2024. It's so good, guys. I read it. It's pretty good.
You wrote it even.
I think your art really pushed. Whatever. You're great.
Cool. I've never gotten to say this at a con before because I just changed my username online. But you can find me on Instagram and Tumblr at Lady Goofus. And I also neglected to show my book before, so this is Just Pretend. And I have a second book coming out next fall called Stand Up, also for middle grade. So thank you everybody so much for coming.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, give it up for our panelists. All right.
What was
All
that?
right. Oh no, that's all.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.